So when the break started, someone was looking at the schedule, and I think I heard them say that personal trainers sneaked into the conference and we need to call security. So hopefully they didn't do that. So I am actually an engineer, and like Hugo said, this is not the usual topic in a technical conference, but I think it's very important that we discuss it for a minute. So, how many of you guys sit more than 6 hours? Just raise your hands. Okay, 7? Okay, 8? 9? 12 hours? There's one, okay. So, at the end, this is yours. So, how I got here, it's a similar, no, that's not the screen you should be looking at. This is more like it, except the settings. Okay, great. So let's see. Yeah, that's correct. So, I went to school, got a degree, I did a PhD, and, you sit there a lot also. And then, I'm 41 years old now. There was COVID in the middle. And why that it's important is because this kind of thing happened. Before COVID, I was exercising every day. I was working on getting certified on some fitness programs. And then during COVID, I got worried about work. I thought the demand would drop, but of course, demand exploded. And I took on too much work, basically, and that made me feel bad. So I stopped training and sat more. And I felt more bad, worse. I felt worse about that. So I started eating junk, trying to feel myself, feel better. So I gained weight because I was eating junk and sitting more and not training. And then I got low back pain and I felt worse. So then I decided one day after 6 months of doing nothing to train again, and I got injured, which is, it wasn't the smartest thing I've done in my life. And then I got stuck in this cycle where I was trying to rehab, but to rehab, I needed to lose weight, but I couldn't train, so I couldn't lose the weight. So that kind of vicious cycle of needing to do something, but not being quite able to do it, was very stressful. And this is what psychologists call a downward spiral, where we have some thoughts, those thoughts create some emotions, and then because we feel that way, we start behaving some other way. And that cycle repeats itself and gets worse, the more cycles we go through. And in the end, it becomes quite difficult to get out of. So it's best to not get into that, to work the other way around. And while I was going through all that, I realized that, as I was speaking to my colleagues, to other people I met in conferences and meetups, I realized we don't really talk about that kind of thing, right? No one opens a conversation with, well, my back kind of hurts and, I haven't really found something to help me. It's usually about, well, React or Angular or, what's the hottest framework of the day. And, how much coffee we're, oh, long slide, should be this one. We pushed code to the production yesterday without testing and, something happened. And I also realized that by the time I started feeling pain, whether it was my back pain or the injury I had with the knee, that was the last thing that happened in a long sequence of events, but we tend to associate the final break with with the whole situation. So it's not very different to say, having a bad culture at work or not testing ever, and then, finding a really bad bug that costs us millions, right? So it's similar to this iceberg kind of metaphor where, all this is happening as we go through every day. And then at the end, we get the pain and we go to the doctor. And of course, when I went to the doctor for my back pain, they said, well, we need to send you to, to have an MRI, see what's going on with your spine. I was like, okay. So I went and had the MRI, and then the MRI showed a dehydrated disc, and we'll see what that is. Does anybody know what a dehydrated disc is? Okay, one person. This will be useful too. And I said, okay, great, so how do I rehydrate it? Because it doesn't sound that good. Well, they said you can't. I didn't like that response. So I started studying more about what happens when we sit and what do we need to do to not let that happen. So let's do a quiz. I hope this works because I need to Alt-tab into the browser, and I have the wrong window open. So just shout out what you think is influenced by what, especially when the first system is malfunctioning or dysfunctioning, right? So where should we draw arrows in this diagram? And it's fine if you don't understand everything. Just give me something. Fascia and muscles, okay, good. What else? Muscles and bones, so muscles affect bones, that's true. And joints, yes, that's all connected, yep. Metabolism, yes. To what? To muscles, okay. And cells, okay, so cells, metabolism, muscles. I was supposed to draw the arrows, but it will take too long, so please remember what you answered. Anything else? Muscles and spine, yes. Spine is kind of a bone and a joint, so it's somewhere in the middle, let's say. What else? No, don't cheat. What else? That's it, right? Those are the obvious ones. All right. So let's look at what the research says. Please switch. Oh, I'm not in the presentation, that's why. All right, so we did the quiz. There we go. All right, so cardiovascular, right? So what happens with our veins and our heart and all that system? So our arteries are elastic, which means that they can expand and contract as the blood flows through them, and that's a good property, right? They adjust. Now, when we sit after 3 hours, only 3 hours, and most of us here, like I started at 6 because I thought, no one's gonna answer, like I said 2 hours. The elasticity is decreased between 2 and 4%. I'm rounding the numbers. And 1% decrease in the elasticity means 13% higher risk of heart disease, right? So it's a big deal. And basically our hearts have to work much harder when we sit to maintain the blood flow. So the oxidative stress, so if you've taken antioxidants, all that stuff, there's this process happening everywhere in the body, including the vessel walls. So the oxidative stress goes up, the blood pressure goes up, and plaque begins to form in the arteries, the plaque that makes us have a heart attack when it gets too much. And most importantly, we mostly think of that this happens to old people or people who are not healthy, but actually it happens in all of us. It doesn't matter if we're healthy now, this is going on. Metabolism. The muscles stop absorbing glucose, and the insulin response, insulin is the chemical that the body produces after we intake glucose, and that response is decreased significantly. And the signaling around those functions is also decreased. Then the LPL enzymes, which is, if you had a blood test, you probably tested your total cholesterol. The LPL is one component of that test. And it's basically the enzymes that break the triglycerides, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, break down the triglycerides in the body. So check this out. The LPL enzymes in the muscles get lazy, right? They stop doing that process. But the LPL enzymes that are in our fat storage keep working. So all the fat that we, all the food that we ingest becomes fat. And then the triglycerides alone are a problem because they go up 25 to 40%. So if you want to cheat on your blood test, walk for a few days before going to get your blood tests. And then inflammation goes up, the anti-inflammation goes down, and we are more hungry. This is all happening when we sit. On a cellular level, the mitochondria, if you remember that from school, those are the energy production centers of the body. Their capacity goes down, the oxidative stress goes up, inflammation increases. Who knows what gene expression is? Okay, so genes, you all know what genes are, the DNA and all of that. So they have some information encoded in them, and their function is to produce proteins that go and execute those things encoded in the genes. And we call that gene expression, right? Now, they took some people who were fairly active, and we made them sit down for 2 weeks, probably bed rest if I remember correctly. And they took samples of their muscles before and after. And what they found was that 4,500 of these genes, which is about 25% of the total genes in the muscles, changed their expression. So the average amount of change was 20%, but some genes changed more than 50. And the genes that were affected were that long list there. So energy production, glucose, lipid metabolism, what we discussed, the nerve muscle communication, pro-inflammation and anti-inflammation, oxidative stress, timing, and sleep. And just to make a note here that our bodies have a mechanism to do inflammation, because inflammation in some context is a useful mechanism, right? So it's not always a bad thing. Now, this change is measurable in as little as 3 days. So in 3 days, we can see these genes starting to change their expression, and they increase over the 14-day period. Now, if we check if we can go back, can we reverse this? They found that 85% of that change was reversible in 14 days, and then the rest in more than 30. And then for older people, and old doesn't mean 80, probably like 40 or 50, they reverse slowly or not fully. Joints. This is a joint there, probably the knee, I would guess, just on the two bones and without the actual kneecap. But the structure is always the same. So there's two bones, and then in the middle we have some tissue that acts like a separator between the two bones so that they don't hit each other, and obviously that would be bad. The issue is that there is no blood flow to the actual joint, especially the stuff in the middle, the cartilage. So the joint system relies on the circulation of the synovial fluid, which is some fluid that's within, like in the middle, and provides like cushioning. So we need to actually move our joints for that fluid to circulate and do the exchange of nutrients and waste, right? So the circulation goes down, so there's less nutrition for the cartilage. We produce less hyaluronic acid, so there's more inflammation, and the whole metabolic disruption that we talked about earlier, that influences the joints also. So it's no surprise that we found that the likelihood of pain in knees and hips is 1.8 and 2x for people who don't move a lot. And then if you're over 40 like me, then the risk, if you're sitting more than 7.5 hours, the risk of osteoarthritis goes up almost 50%. Spine, big one. So the whole problem with the spine is that we go from this posture where everything is kind of distributed, so some weight is taken by the lower part of the body, but also because of the angles and the way the spine is designed, which is an S curve, the tensions are balanced. But when we sit, when we have that hunch, the bones actually come closer to each other and they start compressing the material in the middle. And that goes up, the compression goes up 40 to 90%. And if you're slouched, it's almost 200%. So if we sustain that pressure over time, then we get the disc dehydration because there's less nutrient delivery. And it's just the beginning of those old postural changes that we know, the chest in, the neck forward, all of that. So let's look at, there was a study done very recently, I think 2022. I can't see, but somewhere around that. And they found that 73% of 9-year-olds have at least one bulging disc. And we'll see what that bulging disc is here. So on the left, you can see a drawing of a spine, and those are the kind of different states of disc degeneration. So on the top, you have a normal disc. When it starts degenerating, dehydrating, it looks like the second one, and this is the equivalent that we get from anatomy, so from dissection. And when it's bulging, it means the compression pushes the disc, the stuff in the middle, which is gel-like, I mean a very hard gel, but gel-like, outside, and then over time it can hit nerves and causes pain, or become herniated, which means that the liquid can start leaking out into the canal, which is even worse. And then, it can get really worse if the disc starts becoming thinner over time. And the worst case scenario is this here, where the bones come very close, and then the body actually builds extra bone to somehow protect it. That's the most painful. And you see that kind of last stage over here. There is some limited evidence that it also influences our, our brain and how we work in the central nervous system. We definitely know that our awareness of our body and what's going on inside it, our proprioception, goes down. And then because of the blood flow and the glucose and all of that, it also influences brain function a little bit too, which is probably why, when we take walks, we have most of our best ideas. Musculoskeletal, the muscle activity goes down 80 to 90% when we sit. So basically our muscles become weak and they shrink. Protein synthesis goes down, and there's almost 50% risk of chronic pain. Now, this is a fascinating part of anatomy that's is relatively new, and I'll explain a little bit why it's important. And it's this thing called the fascia, which most people will probably hear for the first time. It's all this stuff that exists everywhere in our bodies. And when you see the drawings in the anatomy books where there's a skeleton and some muscles on top of it, That's a lie. It doesn't look like that. It's drawn that way because as they were doing anatomy, they were cutting through all the fascia because it kind of glues everything together, right? So it's this kind of matrix that exists everywhere between the muscles and the fat, the nerves around the organs. It's literally everywhere. So what we know about it now is that it's a tension network. So it helps distribute the forces that exist within us, or when we pull something or push something. And it's also a sensory organ, so it transfers signals and actually plays a big role in creating chemistry from force, right? So as it accepts force into that network, our chemistry adapts. And it's also very dynamic. So depending on how you load it, it looks a little bit like a sweater when you look at it zoomed out. This is a sort of drawing of how it envelops everything. It is literally over our whole body, right? So all the transparent stuff you see on this picture is fascia. Now, why this is important is because we initially thought that the body is a compression structure like this, right? So there's these big blocks just sitting one on top of the other, and somehow they can balance themselves out. But when they actually tried to rebuild models of the spine, they couldn't do it because the bones, the surface that the bones touch with each other is very small, so you can't actually make it stick without adding something like strings that you see on the side here. And this is not supposed to be an exact replica of what happens in the body, like the fascia is literally everywhere. But it just gives you an idea of the kind of thing you need to do to make that stand. And this is, by the way, 12 meters high, so it's a big construct. So we're changing our ideas about the muscles and the tension and how that behaves in terms of keeping us in a posture. So initially we thought, oh, these are just levers, right? So we have a lever here on the elbow, and this just does that. It's not true. This is our current understanding of what's called the anatomic trains, and it's a model that has a lot of scientific validation to it. And you can see, for example, that on the back here, and this is a line that suffers a lot when we sit, starts from the top of the head over here, so all the way from here, goes down the back, down our back with these two, round muscles here, then through the hips, and then goes down to the legs and finishes at the front of the toes, right? So I don't know about you guys, but I found this amazing when I found out about it. Now, what happens with the fascia when we sit is that they become dehydrated, dense and sticky. They have this glide property, which means that if you pick, your skin here, you can move it, right? That's a property of the fascia because the fascia connects your skin, the fat underneath it, and the muscle underneath it. But normally it can glide like this, which means we are able to move in many ways. When we sit, it becomes really dense and sticky, and it starts having adhesions, which means it kind of becomes like a ball. And that's very difficult to break. And it also loses its ability to take force from any direction, right? So if we constantly load the fascia in one direction, it changes its shape to support only that direction and cannot respond so well in the other directions. And a very common example is, don't you love these drawings? They always have really great butts and no cellulite, and they're perfect, right? So anyway, we have a lot of fascia here that's very dense, and we found that when we sit, it actually thickens very much, and that makes us be stiff here. There's not necessarily pain, but lack of mobility. So let's go back to our quiz. Please forget the cheater over there from the speakers. But as you can see, there's arrows from everything to everything, right? So everything interacts with each other, and it has an effect on everything. So this is a kind of shift. So we're ending up with this. Movement is required for our body's chemistry to work. This is, astounding to me. Now, do we have any Rust developers in the room? Okay, good, I can make this joke. So, rest is rust, motion is lotion. Okay, so remember that. Now, as if all that stuff is not bad enough, our body actually adapts to what we do, not what we would have liked to be doing, right? So ideally, we would want our body to just work to keep us straight and, beautiful. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Anytime we do something repeatedly, our body goes, okay, this is what we're doing, so I need to make this really efficient, really cheap, in terms of processing power. So it starts to lay down more structure to support that, habit. So for example, this is the most common adaptation, the tech neck, they call it, which pisses me off. And you see that, the neck has a really bad angle here when it should be like this. And this is a photo I took from an osteopathic website, I think, where they say, well, we can fix this. But look how they're only talking about bones, right? They're talking about x-rays, and there's nothing about fascia, there's nothing about the muscles. And check this here, right? Check the angle of all the meaty stuff here and all the meaty stuff here. The bones cannot, support themselves on their own. This is all a system. But unfortunately, a lot of these professions don't talk to each other, right? So they all have their own models and they work within those, which is not that different to what we do. We have React and we don't talk to the Angular people except from a distance. And, we often argue about it. Then they're very similar in that sense. So basically, the point of this is that over time, if we sit too much, we become chair-shaped. It's not a metaphor, this is literal. And to add insult to injury, I don't know if you guys know that expression, I love it. It gets worse with stress. Why? Because we have these primal reflexes, right? And this is a photo of a guy who's standing there and he doesn't know it, but someone is about to shoot a gun behind him, right? Not at him, but behind him. And when the sound goes off, when he hears the sound, he goes. That's a primal response to any threat that is supposed to protect us, right? So he's covering his neck and his soft bits, his heart and the belly that's completely unprotected. And over time, if we experience a lot of stress that we do not recover from, we get this. And can you guys see colleagues of yours like this, right? Not as extreme, obviously, this is a drawing, but we can all see this, right? You've seen this somewhere in the tech world, and hopefully not in the mirror. And I used to be a little bit like this, like I've corrected a lot of these things. So very impactful behavior sitting, right? So we see changes from within the first 24 hours. Within 30 days, there's some of that is becoming, is starting to become more permanent. And then, if we do it for months or years, then, we really need to work to reverse it. All right, so what's our next move? You get the pun, right? What's our next move? Okay. So every time I kind of talk about the subject in, in a social environment, there's always a response. Oh, I know, I have a standing desk, or before I go to work, I walk for 20 minutes, and I always go, that's great. I really like that you have a standing desk and that you walk for 20 minutes, but unfortunately, the research says that this is not enough, right? So even when we stand, yes, our muscles work more. So you can see there's like 5 to 10 times more than if we're just sitting. That's great, but actually it doesn't improve our health markers. And we kind of have this this idea that if we're doing this one thing, that's going to be enough. So some people will say I walk, other people will say I go to the gym, and that's fine, right? So I'm doing that. What we're actually finding is that we cannot do just the one. So we can't just break the sitting and expect for our health markers to improve. We also need to do moderate to vigorous activity. We can't just sit all day and do moderate and vigorous activity at the gym or wherever it is that we do it and expect to undo the 8 hours of sitting. Those are two separate things. And there's very recent research to support that. So, is anybody getting a headache by now? No? Okay, I was. This is what I'm ending up with. This is what I think we need to be doing. And it's, it's from my research as well. I will say which ones of these ideas are my own and not supported by research. So, before when it came to sitting, I was trying to teach myself to be, as still as I could, and thinking that this would just allow me to be more productive, right? So I kind of punished myself for moving around or getting up too much. And now I'm thinking, okay, we need to stand as much as we can, and then we need to get up and move every 30 minutes, which is actually a nice threshold because at around 55 minutes, we have evidence that our focus starts to drift anyway. So we might as well get up and get the physical benefits from it. When it comes to posture, we have this idea that someone has a good posture or a bad posture, but we need to remember that a posture is a moment in time. It's a photograph. And when our posture starts to break, we need to get up, right? That's our body's signal that I'm not starting to feel good. Things are happening and you need to move around, right? Remote work. I have had some disagreements in the past about this. And most people say, well, I don't want to commute. I gain all this time by not doing that. And I'm like, that's amazing. That's great that we can do that. Not every profession can do that, but most of us actually did that when they gave us remote work. So we got up from the bed, sat on the computer, finished our work, then sat on the couch to watch Netflix, and then go back to bed. So if you are working remotely, use that extra time to walk and exercise. When it comes to exercise, we also have this idea, well, it's not an idea, but we're all drawn to the exercise, the type of exercise that makes us feel good, right? The one we like, the one we're good at, and it makes us feel successful, and that's natural. But actually, we need to thinking about more about the exercise that we need based on what we have been doing. And we also think of sitting as not doing anything, right? It's not something that we need to recover from. It's like if we go for a sprint, we kind of understand that we need to stretch afterwards. But when we sit, we're like, well, I was just sitting, like I wasn't doing anything. But in actual fact, seeing all that, we actually need to move after sitting. Like that is the recovery from the sitting period. And this is a model of how to think of the activity over time that I got from a program called TACFIT, which I've studied. And what the founder of this program noticed is that if we kind of follow this wavy pattern of changing through intensities, with no intensity being just mobility work, and actually, so let's try this, because I've been talking about a half an hour, and you guys have been sitting. So try this with your wrist, okay? And we're only gonna try one wrist, because I want you to notice how you're gonna feel with the other wrist. So just, use your index finger and just grab it with the other one, and then just move your wrist up and down. Okay, and then side to side. And I'll make it a circle. And go the other way. Okay, and then just do this like, imagine you have a glove and you need to put your hand through it, and just do that. Okay, so we did what, 10 seconds of this exercise. How does that feel? How does this wrist feel versus your other one? Just shout out. Better? What? Looser. Okay. Well, there was something in the back. Anyone else want to share their experience? So, it doesn't take a lot, right? We just need to just help our joints a little bit. And where's my clicker? Here it is. So this idea is that on no intensity days, we do some mobility work. We just move our joints, like literally no intensity. Low intensity is some form of compensation. Compensation means that we are compensating for whatever activity we've been doing all the time, i.e. sitting. So this is some sort of stretching, yoga, whatever you feel more comfortable with. And then we have moderate intensity, where we work on technique or end strength of some skill. Could be weights, could be body weight, could be really anything. And then on the high intensity day, we work on volume, which means we go fast, but we go as fast as our technique can hold it, right? So for as long as we can do the exercises well, we give our heart a good workout. So if we look at this chart that I made up, and on the x-axis, you have structural requirement. So how much structure does your body need to be able to do an activity? And then intensity on the y-axis. We need to fill in the gaps, right? So whichever quadrant your favorite activity is, you need activities from the other three quadrants too, ideally, right? So these are some examples. Yesterday, I found out that there is a thing called frisbee golf that you guys love here. And that, along with walking and mobility and stretching, is on the low structure and low intensity. And then on the other far right side top is something like CrossFit, which is very intense and very a big requirement on structure. And something like acrobatics and ballet is probably on that end, but lower. Then we have hiking and running. Obviously, it depends on how fast you're doing these things. So, it's different if you're jogging and if you're doing sprints. Swimming, again, because of the amazing variability that it can give you. So you can go ultra slow, and that's going to be a low intensity activity, and you can go fast, and that's going to be a high intensity activity. But in terms of structure, the water shields you from doing anything too stupid. And yoga is probably there. Depends on the kind of yoga, obviously. So if you're just doing breathing exercises like pranayama, it's all the way over here. If you're doing Bikram or something, that's all the way over there. And the point is, there are so many modalities that you guys can explore and practice and just become interested in, right? Not everybody has to do the same thing. You just need to find the one that suits you best. And then weights also have a very big range, obviously. At the bottom left, you have machines. I don't recommend those because you also are asked to do movements that are very unnatural in some cases. And they also teach the body to isolate, which is not what we need, as in our industry especially. And on the far right, if you're doing something like HIIT with weights, that's obviously intense and requires a lot of structure. Anything I missed and you're wondering about and you want to discuss? Cycling. Again, I would put it in near this axis because also like swimming, the bike kind of prevents you from, like it's a very controlled activity. I mean, unless you're doing, jumps over cliffs and that stuff, it's another thing. And the intensity you can vary depending on the, the surface you're going on and the steepness of it and all that kind of thing. Anything else? Yep. Martial arts, that's a good one. I don't have a lot of experience with martial arts, so I was hesitant to put it there. I would say martial arts are good. Of course, it's a huge variety, right? So it's different if you're doing taekwondo or like judo, right? So judo is very low intensity in some ways. Taekwondo can be very, or like kung fu or something. But what I like about martial arts is that they have a level system and you can't jump levels. So you're always working at the level that you should be, ideally. And this is part of this, what you should take from this chart, that if you're only doing walking right now, don't go to CrossFit now, just do some things in the middle, and then, maybe over time you can graduate to that. But, take it a step at a time, right? So keep away from injuries, just keep yourself healthy. Entertainment, this is a big one, right? Because we get off the chair and then, like I said, we go to the couch and we watch Netflix or we play Call of Duty. I don't know, maybe it's better to, walk in nature and, maybe go out paintballing if you want to shoot stuff, which, I highly endorse. And maybe socialize, there's a million types of different dances you can try. I know that's weird for us engineers, but you'd be surprised. And we also have this idea that, we have this split that like there's our, office self and non-office self, and we need to break that up because we can't afford to be active only in one of them. We need to be active in both of these sort of personas. And, maybe we don't talk about Claude and ChatGPT and vibe coding only. Maybe we start acknowledging that we have a body and we kind of discuss what's helping us, what's not helping us, all those things. That's the real DX, right? That's our actual experience in life. So, don't wait to go to the doctor when the pain arises. Take some action now. It's much, much easier. Just, pretend you have a Kubernetes cluster and you just need to tinker with it all the time. And if you are feeling overwhelmed, as I was when I got injured, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta lose all this weight and I can't train, and I just felt so bad about it. But again, there's metaphors everywhere. We're doing this agile thing, but why are we doing this agile thing? Because we tried some other things that said, okay, let's start by imagining everything, and then, from that imagination, going to take some action, and didn't work out that well because, things changed too much. So we said, okay, let's break it up. Let's do a little bit and then take some feedback and then, do that over and over. And hopefully we build some velocity. Then we go faster. Then we are stronger. It's not that different to stacking habits, right? So just start somewhere that you feel comfortable, that you feel you can do it, that is achievable, then do it, feel good about it, that you've done it with the benefits and because you did it and you know that it's good for you in the long term, and then just add another thing and another thing and another thing. And if you do this, then you can expect to be more energetic. You obviously will be more healthy, and you will have less discomfort. I mean, how many of us at the end of a working day, especially if you have a release, like feel like achy all over, like without actual pain necessarily, but just like really kind of stiff? Yeah, so it's quite a common problem. And that will help you be more productive. That is the actual productivity hack, not sitting too much. So, people ask me, what do we need to be doing? I say, it's all simple, it's all understandable, there's no high complexity here, but it's very challenging. Like, we have to change our ways. And people historically are very resistant to that. But it's also very important, it's imperative, I would say, that we start doing this. I was expecting lots of laughs with that one, but okay. All right, so just closing here, I just want to say one thing about this project that I'm starting. It's called stateofhealth.tech. It's like the Stack Overflow survey that you all know about, which asks us about our favorite technologies and the technologies we use, and our salaries and all that. And we have so much data there, but we don't have much data around these things, right? It's all going to be anonymous right now. It's only a waiting list. So you just fill in your email and I'll let you know when the survey is open. And the idea is to start collecting some data that we refresh every year, just like the Stack Overflow survey. And we hopefully draw some attention to these issues and how common they are. If you'd like to follow me, that's my LinkedIn. And before I leave, I want to show you this video because all it takes is one person, as they say, hopefully. No? Why is it? It's not playing. What's that? Yeah, I swear I tried it. So I did test before pushing to production, but it's not cooperating. Okay, let's try in the browser. I know, right? You gotta live on the edge.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore. It's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the
Look at
credit,
this.
but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told.
So let's start a movement, guys, okay? Thank you.